One thing I always like to share with people when I'm trying to explain what the tarot is that you can think of it as a spiritual text in some ways, an unbound book of knowledge and wisdom, of human knowledge and wisdom that's been collected through the ages. There's something very ancient about the minor arcana, and then there's something a little bit more modern and new about the major arcana. And then, like, artists keep reinterpreting this. Each of these images represents kind of a situation, an energy, a person, like a thing that's going to happen to you in your human life. These are the 78 things you're going to come across as a person. This is basically the cheat codes. If you learn what these 78 things feel like in your nervous system, you'll pattern recognize.
Welcome to Soul Pod, where science meets mysticism and your inner wisdom leads the way. I'm your guide, Crystal Cassidy, and together we will bridge the seen and the unseen, science and spirituality, the practical and the profound. From quantum physics to energy centers, near-death experiences to extraterrestrial contact, join us as we delve into the mysteries of consciousness and journey together towards a more awakened, compassionate, and soul-connected world. Find your seat, drop in, and let's go on a journey together. Welcome back, light beings. So excited to be in conversation today with Betina Bethlem. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Thanks for having me.
I am really excited to chat with you today because we have so much in common. But you're a mystic, you're a yogi, you're an artist. And what I'm really excited to dive into with you is intuition and the tarot. So for all of you tarot lovers out there, this episode is for you. But maybe to start, you could walk us through your awakening journey and specifically how it's connected to your intuition and how you used your intuition to move through pretty massive changes in your life. So yeah, let's start there.
Amazing. What an amazing question. And thank you for the warm introduction. When I think about my awakening journey, I think of it almost as like an ongoing sort of, almost I picture it kind of as like an upward spiral, like throughout life.
Totally. Yeah.
And I have this impression that, like, when we're little and when I was little, like I was awake, and like my intuition was just firing as normal, like as natural as is natural to us as human beings. And then, you know, as school wore on and like testing and getting into college and all these things that like really like, yeah, like that really plug you into sort of like the templates, I like to call them, of like reality or of the matrix. Kind of as that kind of wore on, I feel like it's sort of as like a slumber starts to like descend onto your third eye, onto your intuition. And I think it's one of those things that we always kind of know on some level is there, but like at least for me, like in my 20s, I was really more in sort of like a dormant state around it. So when you ask me about like my awakening journey, like I think of it almost in like these layers. Like I remember being a kid and being attracted to tarot decks at the Barnes and Noble in Short Hills, New Jersey, and like I remember buying like Linda Goodman's astrology books when I was in high school and reading them. And like these things were always kind of there. And like I started doing yoga when I was 15 because I had like a cross country injury from my varsity team in high school. And so like it's like there were little like moments of like being awake that I remember from very, very long ago. And then, yeah, in my 20s, like entering the working world, it's like, even though I kept my yoga practice going, and like that's when I started doing yoga teacher trainings, and I was working with like our family astrology during all those years, I felt really sort of separated from my intuition in a lot of ways. And I would say that the awakening really happened when I was the farthest kind of from myself, which was during my Saturn return.
Like
I
so many
was
of us.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's and for those of you, I'm sure many of your listeners know about this, but for those who don't know, it's when Saturn returns to the place in your birth chart where it was when you were first born, and it happens somewhere between age, I think 27, 28 and like 30, 31. So I can't remember exactly when mine was, but that was like a big moment of kind of having my like third eye fly open, because I sort of was like, oh my God, like this life that I'm living feels like it has very little to do with me. And so, I was engaged to be married at the time. I was working, I wouldn't say in corporate America, but I was working sort of a more corporate job. And I just was like looking around my life being like, is this it? Like, is this everything that we're striving for? Like, isn't there more? I ended up deciding not to get married. I ended up doing the eat, pray, love thing and like moving to Indonesia and diving more into yoga and all of these things and listening to a lot of podcasts actually about this sort of topic area. A lot of them. I was just consuming so much podcast content, like channeling Pleiadians, like people talking about chakras, like Kundalini yoga, all of the things. And it was there that it happened, and it was also there that the tarot came in. Totally serendipitously, my tarot teacher appeared during that time, and everything just started to like make more sense. And I would say it was a long process. Like I think from like age 30 to like 33, 34, 35, I was like doing the shadow work to kind of really reintegrate my intuition. It almost felt like something that had like, yeah, like fallen asleep or gotten sort of like forgotten in the attic or something and was layered with all these things. And it just took some time to slowly climb back up that little spiral that I was talking about at the beginning of this. So yeah.
So much resonates for me in your journey. And I love the visual of the spiral. And that's why I also love the term awakening rather than enlightenment, because enlightenment, it is a big moment in the spiritual journey, but it's more of like a moment in it. And this is like a continuous experience. And I also want to double click on what you said about being younger and having this intuition that, I mean, you it is who you are, so you come into this incarnation with this natural ability, which is intuition, and it goes, like you said, it gets like dormant and sleepy. And it made me think, I've never really put it together in exactly this way before, but it made me think about the collective experience of like the collective at large getting further and further from who it is that we really are, to the point to where we start to, as an entire species, start to be like, wait a second, is this it? Is this who we are? And then this intuition, this feminine side of our being can start to come back into our experience. It's like as within, so without. It's the same in the individual journey, that we kind of lose it, or we really get deep into our humanness, which has such a gift of experience in it. So there's nothing wrong with that. But coming back into who it is that you really are on that awakening journey is so interesting and so powerful. And yeah, for tarot, I'm interested in, you're an expert in this. I don't think we've had an expert in tarot on the podcast. So I would love to hear from you. How do you think about the tarot as an intuitive channel compared to maybe other intuitive channels? And I did a little research. This is kind of an add-on, but I did a little research before this conversation. I was like, wait, when did tarot become a thing? And
Mhm.
it was so interesting to me that it started in Italy as a card game and then really kind of got its spiritual divination mark in France 300, 400 years ago. So it's kind of like over the last couple hundred years really become a part of our culture in a bigger and bigger way, which I think says something. So I'm curious, how do you think about the tarot as this divination tool?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I almost think of it like less as a divination tool. I mean, it is that, and it is an oracle, and it is all of that, but I almost think of it less as that and more as like a tool that helps us to reconnect with our intuition.
Mm.
And it's really, I love that you looked into the history of it, and I was curious what you would have come up with because it's kind of this mysterious thing in a way, like in the sense that the tarot is broken up into two types of cards. There's the major arcana, which are kind of like the big mysteries or the big secrets, and the minor arcana, which are the small mysteries or the smaller secrets. And what happened in Italy during that time when the tarocchi, the Visconti Sforza tarot deck was created, is that they put in the major arcana. But the part that always has really kind of just mystified me is that the minor arcana has existed for far longer, and it's something that's kind of hard to trace because it's all based off of a traditional deck of cards. It basically is a traditional deck of cards. Like I always got my tarot decks here. Here we go. We've got the Ace of Swords right
Oh,
here.
yeah.
This is
Beautiful.
this is the Ace of Diamonds,
Mm.
This is the King of Hearts.
So it's like
King,
directly
yeah.
connected to the classic card deck.
Exactly. Like I'm just pulling
Okay.
cards randomly. This is the one of my favorite cards. The 10 of Hearts is the equivalent. And then we Chariot, we start getting into some majors.
So beautiful. Love those
So
cards.
thank you. This is my deck, the Cosmic Codes. To approach it from the standpoint of the history of it, because, some people trace the original playing cards, I think, to ancient China is the
Mm.
most common thing that I've heard. But I think we kind of don't really know. It sort of seems like one of those things that like a lot of different cultures had some version of playing cards.
Yeah.
Like I've even heard that like the ancient Egyptians had some form of playing cards and things like that. So there is this sort of more modern element of what came in through the major arcana, but then there's also this thing that's very ancient, which is the minor arcana. I always think like, yeah, the major arcana gets like so much, like people love the major arcana. They always
They
want to
do.
pull a major card in their reading. Like it's exciting. They're the big, it's like they're the superstars,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the minor arcana, I kind of like love them and like in a way even more because the minor arcana comes back to the four elements. And this is part of why I think the tarot is such a powerful tool for us to reconnect with our nature, which is intuitive, which
Mm.
includes a feminine principle, like which includes sort of an intelligence that goes beyond the logic of our mind, but includes, our somatic intelligence, the body, which is the pentacles, which is the earth element. It includes the intelligence of our heart, of our emotions, of our feelings, which is hearts, the cups, the suit of water, which includes the fire element, which is our inspiration, which is kind of our connection to the unseen world, which is our ability to sort of act in an inspired way that feels almost channeled. And that's wands or rods or clubs. Our culture attributes so much kind of weight and respect to the air element, which is swords, which is the mind and logic and our ability to communicate. And it's almost like our culture thinks like that's all we've got. And it's a great
Yeah.
tool, like the tool of the mind, like the air element, amazing. Like it helps us do so many things. But the interesting thing is that, like, what the minor arcana shows in the arc of the story of those 10 cards, well, including the 14, if you include the court cards, is that that's the element that most easily goes out of balance. And a lot of different sort of modalities that talk about elements, like, speak about the air element and the challenges of it. And so there's something to that of like if we're
Mm.
over relying only on our logic and our mind, like we go out of balance. We actually have this entire nervous system that if you tune it up and you understand it's a whole intelligent thing, that's what makes your intuition start working. Like your intuition, I kind of believe it's like a threading together of all these intelligences, which really is a healthy nervous system. That's what
Mm.
being intuitive is. And that's what these cards help you to reconnect with.
Beautiful. That's such a great description of the tarot. And I love that you mentioned that because we've talked about this on the podcast, that we're over indexed on the analytical mind, the logical mind. That's been the pinnacle or like the ultimate definition of intelligence in our culture. And what we're talking about here is different elements, literal elements of intelligence, and how, like you said, they all weave together to help us tune into our intuition in a way that maybe most of us haven't done yet. And so I'm curious, how do you define intuition? I know people have different kind of definitions for it. And maybe this goes together with this question with the tarot for the skeptics out there that are like, well, it's just random chance. You're just pulling a card and, you're making meaning out of it. So what kind of links those two things together? This randomness of it, and really is anything random? That's a whole nother question. But how do you think about this connection of intuition and the act of like pulling or selecting a card?
Well, it's funny what pops to mind when you ask me that question. I think of something, I'm going to quote my friend Patrick House. He says, intuition is a fancy thing your brain does. And like that's from a more sort of,
I love that.
neurological perspective, neuroscientist perspective. I would edit it to say it's a fancy thing your nervous system does, which
Mm,
is kind of the same thing. Like I'm sure you've seen, or, folks have probably seen that picture that shows what the nervous system is. And it's like the brain with then like this crazy net thing that comes out and it looks like an alien. And
yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's all connected, right? So the intuition kind of is a fancy thing your brain does, a fancy thing your
Mm,
nervous system does. What's the fancy thing that's happening? You could kind of boil it down to pattern recognition a little bit. Like that is kind of what this is about. Like one thing I always like to share with people when I'm trying to explain what the tarot is that you can think of it as a spiritual text in some ways,
yeah.
an unbound book of knowledge and wisdom, of human knowledge and wisdom that's been collected through the ages. We started at the beginning talking about the history of this. Like there's something very ancient about the minor arcana, and then there's something a little bit more modern and new about the major arcana, and then like artists keep reinterpreting this. The most
Mm,
famous decks out there, there's the Rider-Waite Coleman Smith, which came out, I believe it was in the 1800s, and then like the Thoth deck that Aleister Crowley did in around the 1920s, I think. And so like I'm just referencing those two because they're some of the most widely used ones, but it's like these archetypes keep getting sort of revisited and recycled through and like added to. I could imagine 100 years from now there being more than 78 cards in this text.
mm.
So yeah, so it's like a spiritual text. You read it in a nonlinear way because the book isn't bound. You read it through pulling the cards. Within it are these archetypes, and let's simplify it even more. Like each of these images represents kind of a situation, an energy, person, like a thing that's going to happen to you in your human life. And what the tarot is a cataloging of like, humanity. Everyone who's worked on this has boiled it down. These are the 78 things you're going to come across as a person. This is basically the cheat codes.
Mm,
If you learn what
yeah.
these
Yeah.
78 things feel like in your nervous system, in your like four-pronged elemental intelligence, then when you come across them in real life, you'll pattern recognize. You'll know like what that is. And so then it just makes you it's almost like a spiritual fitness or an intuitive fitness for that fancy thing your brain does. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
It makes so much sense. That's my favorite definition of the tarot, as an unbound spiritual text that is like your guidebook to all of the elements of the human experience. And it can help you, like you said, pattern recognition if you really want to take it down to this kind of like very embodied earthly interpretation. And, I'm up here in the woo woo a little bit as well. You mentioned the kind of cheat code, this field based experience of consciousness. And I think that the tarot is tapping into, or connected also, as everything is, to that field based experience. And it's a reflective tool, especially since you're going into it with a specific intention for it to be a reflective tool. So I love that definition, because there's a lot of ways you can get spiritual guidance and your human experience guidance. And a lot of them are very intellectual. And the tarot is like, it almost sits between the like intellectual and the experiential. And it's this really easy to access device of guidance. And that's why it's been a big part of my awakening as well. And my husband. So
I love a
I'm
man
gonna
who does
shout
the
out
tarot.
yeah. And he's not a big spiritual person, which I think he's actually quite spiritually advanced but doesn't know it yet. And as he like walks out of the his office. But
Right on
tarot
cue.
has become, it's so cute. Tarot has really become something that we connect on, and we have a ritual around, and it just allows him, and I think so many people, to like get out of their own narrative and like just try on something else, try on another possibility. And I mean, it continues to impress me and baffle me at times, of like what comes through that is just so accurate. And so this is a burning question that I have with the tarot. So when you get, let's say, the Tower card, because I know this is like the one that most people don't want to get in a reading because it's a big change, or like any of the kind of like scary cards. And I oftentimes see people kind of recoil from the tarot because they're a little afraid of that kind of information. And I wonder, do you think of the tarot as predictive? Or do you think of it as like energies that want to be noticed so that you can best navigate life?
Oh my gosh, so many things I want to respond to in that question.
That was a long
No,
question.
no, it's good. No, it's a great one. It's I just love like your reflection understanding of tarot and that you have a tarot practice and that you share it with your husband and that he's into it too. Like that's more of that in the world, please. We love. But I think of it more you said something kind of like the way I would put it is kind of like as it's a mirror, it's a reflection, you were saying. I think of it more as that like, I think it can be used predictively in a way, but I say that with
Mhm.
like a big, big caveat because I think it's much more of like a mirror for the energies that are present in the present. And I think like that's part of what's magical about the tarot. And in some ways, like I do astrology and like yoga and all those things as well. But in some ways, I think of the tarot as being more similar to a yoga practice even than astrology, even though it seems like it's closer to astrology because it does feel a bit like a practice that like places you into like your present moment experience and
Mhm.
helps you, I think, kind of be able to like weave with the universe and like co-create in a way that is more aligned and more centered and more grounded in the same way that like a yoga practice kind of can help you do that or a breathwork
Yeah.
practice or a meditation practice. So my theory on it is kind of this that I like to reference the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once sometimes when I talk about this. Have you seen that one?
So
And yeah,
good.
like there's
Yeah.
all the different timelines, right? There's something to me about that movie that feels like a very like accurate allegory for like how I understand the tarot, which is
Agreed.
like there
Yeah.
are many different timelines that we can walk in this life. And that's part of why I say like cheat codes. Like this helps us kind of, if we can connect with the tarot and have a practice with it that makes us more intuitive, more centered, more grounded, all those things, it helps you walk the timeline of your highest self or like the timeline
Mm.
that most suits you in any given moment. And you can switch them. So like when you do a reading, when you receive a reading or when you're doing one for yourself, let's say for example, you're doing a classic Celtic cross, which has things like past and future on it. And it has things like what's in the ether and it has an outcome. I think that what's being shown to you is kind of like a prediction. I'm going to put that in air quotes for now
Mhm.
of what can happen if you stick with the frequencies that are present right now. And then
Yeah.
the cards are there too to give you some guidance of like I don't know, let's say you have like a really tricky card like in the future. Like let's say you have like a 7 of swords. Like that's a card that indicates like pun not intended, all not all cards are on the table. There might be a little bit of sneakiness happening. There might be a little bit of like
Mm.
you need to turn over more stones to figure out the truth. There's kind of just like a dissonance around truth with the 7 of swords a little bit. Let's say you have that in the future position, like it doesn't mean like, okay, in the future, you're screwed. Someone's gonna lie to you, or you're gonna deceive someone and like they're never gonna
Yeah.
trust you again. The way I like to take it is like, okay, there's an energy of dissonance around truth in the future for you. So be extra curious. Like ask more questions in this
Mm.
situation. Look past your peripheral vision. Really like open up the hood and get in there and roll your sleeves up and like be very inquisitive. Use your intuition too to like connect with an energy of truth. Like if you feel a little off and like there's something not being said, like dig deeper. Like, so do you see how it's
Yeah,
kind of
love that.
both? It's kind of like a little bit
Yeah,
of both the predictive and the like, you don't have to be trapped in a timeline that has a difficult outcome kind of thing.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's coming to my mind is the, being on the ship of life and you're in the waters and you're heading in a particular direction and the winds are blowing a certain way. And it's almost like the tarot is picking up on those winds and how it's impacting your intended journey. Maybe you're not aware of how some of those that weather is manifesting. And so it's informative and to your point, yeah, predictive in a way based on that current moment. I keep on getting from the movie Ghost, when Whoopi
That
Goldberg's
movie.
character says, "Girl, you in danger." Like it's like kind of like it can be, I think the tarot can be a really really nice, like, wake-up call is be like, "Hey, what are you doing
Girl,
here, girl?"
I've
That's, like, such a perfect example of intuition and channeling and all these things. But, it's also, I think, kind of on the other side of it, like, hey, don't forget how powerful you are too. Like, as much as the kind of scarier cards, you can call them that, they're so informational. Like, whenever I get a card, like you're saying, that's, a little heavier, I'm like, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, and that's somewhere I can pay a little bit more attention to, like you're saying, and that is gonna shift how you're guiding the ship based on those wins." So, yeah, there's something really interesting about that, and like I was saying, I also really love when it's saying, like, also pay attention to these superpowers that you have and the opportunities that are at hand, like, seize them, become more aware of them. So it's both, like, sides of the experience, positive or negative, from a certain interpretation has a lot of value, it seems like.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I mean, there's two threads I want to pull on from what you just said. Like one is like I do want to just say that, my approach to the tarot, what interests me about the tarot is like teaching people how to understand it and use it so that they can connect with their superpower, as you just said,
Mm.
and to awaken their gift, whatever it may be. I do think there's a lot of value too to going to a tarot reader who like has a really, really well-honed gift, who can be really, really predictive. That will happen with the tarot. And like that certainly happens sometimes when I give readings. But it's funny, like the arc of my like history in doing this type of work is I've just really felt more interested in the teaching aspect of things because like I am very interested in seeing a world where there's more intuitive beings walking around and expressing their gift, however that may be. It's really interesting. Actually, last night I ran into one of my early students who's become a good friend. And, she took my course. Like, she learned how to do tarot. She understood about the frameworks that I teach. And she told me yesterday that the tarot, she like sort of disconnected from it for a while, for a few years, because she was like having a baby, wasn't her focus. Recently, the tarot started speaking to her again, and she was like, "It is speaking to me, and I'm in my high priestess, and it opened my channel, and I am channeling." And she was like, "It's really different than the way you do it. It's my way of doing it." But
Mm.
like being taught it and having the foundation of it, I think laid sort of the fertile groundwork for her to then trust herself. And like now she's channeling through the cards in her own way. And I think that's part of what's so cool about this is that like there's an art to it. There's kind of like there's these frameworks you can understand and like I can teach them to you. But then it's really about you like filtering your art and your gift through it and like making it your own. And for
Mm.
some people, that is really being like a seer. Like I have come across people who like, I remember my first ever tarot reading, actually, like it was this wacky experience where like everything this woman in the back room of her beauty salon told me, like she was this Russian woman, like everything came true. She was like, a man, you're in love with a man with a high forehead and he's going to come to your house and he's going to like, blah, blah, like it was like that level.
Forehead.
Yeah,
Oh
and
my
he
gosh,
did. It was like my first
that's
love when I
amazing.
was like 19. He did have a bit of a high forehead. So handsome. But anyways, like
I love it.
I'm just wanting to acknowledge that like my way isn't the only way, but I do think my
Yeah.
way is like a foundational thing that like allows more people to like access their way, which is
Mm.
kind of my goal.
I
And
love
then
that so much.
I also wanted to address the scary cards thing
Yeah.
because like the scary cards are it's such an interesting thing. Like the amount of people, I'm sure you've heard this too, like the amount of people that are like, "Oh, I don't do tarot. I'm a bit scared of it."
Yeah.
And I get it because, the tarot really does address the shadows. And like, I think that's part of what's
Mhm.
beautiful about it. It like doesn't let us sweep anything about the human experience under the rug. Like there's something kind of very like hard truth, honest about it. And I have to say, like, I remember vividly the past few times I've pulled the tower card. Tower card is one of those that people are like, "Oh my God, the tower card.
Mhm.
Like, what's going to happen? I'm scared." And there's two times that I've pulled it over the past, let's say, 5 years that was like poignant where like I pulled it and I was like, whoop, okay, wonder what that's gonna mean. And like kind of prepared me. I was like, okay, there's tower energy. That probably
Yeah.
means like something is going to that something I don't need. I'm either gonna decide to let it go or it's gonna get taken away. But like I understand what the tower card means, which is almost like it's kind of like the Marie Kondo of the very, very, very tough Marie Kondo. And like it is not letting anything stick around that's not in alignment with your soul.
Yeah.
That's kind of a good thing.
That's a great thing.
Even though it can be really uncomfortable, it's when you reach a
Yeah.
tower moment, it's like, it's not gonna be comfortable. You're probably not gonna like this, but it's gonna be
Mm.
good for you. And, like, those 2 times, one time was this past summer, the other time was when I first moved to California, like, 5 years ago. I remember those 2 moments, like, so vividly because I was like, "Oh." But it was great what happened afterwards, even though I
Yeah.
experienced some extreme discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people get nervous about it. I did for fun, I did a reading with a couple once and they both got the tower card. I was like, you know, as a reader, and I'm not an expert like you are, but I was like, how do I navigate this? And they didn't end up staying together ultimately, but I think the reason we get nervous about those types of outcomes is very natural. It's because we're afraid on the level of the very base human instinct to orient towards the known. And it's the tarot is like, get comfortable with the unknown, girl. Like,
Yeah, but the
the unknown
mystery.
is it's your
Yeah.
friend, and change is the only constant, and the tarot has been for me, like you're talking about, a really nice way to move through change and to become aware of these different influences that might be at play, and to just give you some space to like, "Oh, how could that apply to my life?" And I think there's not a lot of places that we get access to that. And going back to what you mentioned about teaching others to be their own tarot readers, I think is also, I mean, oh my gosh, we need so much more of that in the world. I feel very similarly with what we're doing at SoulPod, which is eventually I want you to not be in the app. I want you to be able to guide yourself in meditation and breath work and to have all the tools that you need to move through resistance and mental loops and blockages, emotional challenges, spiritual breakthroughs, and then the integration of it all. And so ultimately everybody has that power within them. These are just frameworks, and the tarot is one of those frameworks to help you realize that for yourself.
Mhm.
And I think that's incredibly powerful and a very empowering way to look at working with these different modalities and tools. But I wanted to ask you, with the rise of AI and elements like the tarot, how do you see that being complementary or not with how people may be interacting with AI when it comes to their cards?
I love that you asked me that because, um, I, uh, I think about this a lot, and I talk about people with this a lot because AI is such an amazing tool, and it's also such a scary tool in so many ways when
Hmm.
it comes to spirituality and to these types of practices. I've experimented with it a lot. I mean, I'm right at the intersection of those sort of that tension of like, I love it, I hate it because I used
Same.
it to help me create this deck. I collaborated with AI on the art, and it was a year-long process, and, like, it's something that I sometimes find that I'm kind of defending it in some ways because 'cause I'm like, "Well, it's one thing to go on ChatGPT and generate an image in 1 second and be like, 'I'm an artist.' It's another
Mm,
thing to, like, really work with it almost like, as if it's just your medium and to work through something and, like, make your vision and, like, have it be a part of your toolkit." And,
mhm,
like, we're just at such a early stage of working with this that, like, it's interesting. I wanted to be an early adopter of it, and I wanted to play with it, and that's part of what made it so that this deck could exist in the
mhm.
form that it's in. What I'm seeing now is that people are so interested in astrology and tarot and all of these things, and you can hop on your ChatGPT or your Claude and you can say, like, "Read my natal chart," or, like, "I pulled these 3 cards, what does it mean?" And you can get a lot of information that way, and I'm actually not against people doing that. I just really think people should do it with a lot of mindfulness and, like, intentionality and understanding that, like, they are outsourcing their intuition in that moment.
Mm,
When I start working with a student, I say, please throw away the booklet or just put it away and don't be tempted by it. And don't Google what the card means for like the first several weeks. Like, don't read any books about tarot because I want you to experience the cards purely and I don't want you to hear someone else's interpretation of it. Like, the cool thing about the tarot is that, as we were saying before, it is this catalog of storytelling archetypes that like are created through colors, visuals, symbols, things that like we are intended to recognize. Like here, I'm just happening to pull the lover's card here. Like
Oh,
there's a lot in here, I think, that indicates what the meaning of the card is. The card also has an energy that, like, I sometimes tell people, like, maybe instead of looking at the card, just hold it to your body and close your eyes and like see what you feel from the card. It's like there's
yeah.
lots of ways to interact with these cards that like isn't just about, again, leaning too hard on the swords air element and having something tell you what it
Yes.
means and like actually experiencing that full system knowledge that you have. So
Mm.
with the AI thing, I'm always just like, like use it with care. I use
Yeah.
it too. I'm actually very curious. Sometimes I do a spread and I interpret it and I'm like, I'm curious what the robots have to say and if it's going to be the same as me. Like how advanced are they getting? How
Yeah.
intuitive are they getting? Like I am curious.
Mm.
Just know that like my recommendation anyways is to like start with yourself. Like if you really want to play with your chat with the robots with it, like just make sure you're not like outsourcing your whole intuitive practice because it's a really valuable thing that I don't think can be replicated.
Yeah. Yes. I
Yeah.
would double click on that. I love what you said. The warning there of outsourcing your intuition. And I think outsourcing, and this is such a broader, potentially broader conversation around outsourcing your power, really. And that's something for us to think about. And this is what when I do talks, I talk a lot about inner technology and how once that's turned on in this central channel system, which is the nervous system, dialed up to such a degree that it can handle a lot of energy and find coherence at the same time. And that is going to dial in your intuition and your spiritual capacity and that field based interaction so much more. And when you think about that being that is awakening, that is enlightenment. When that happens, intuition is the ultimate technology. Like it blows AI out of the water, in my opinion, until AI can in some way also entangle with the field experience and understand truly whole systems. Then maybe we get into like a different arena. But when it comes to dream interpretations, when it comes to like interpreting your meditations, I say the same thing. I'm like, see if you can get out of the analytical mind for a moment and like expand into that intuitive capacity, feel your way into it. And so much of the time you'll get information back that is so much more relevant to you because currently how AI is programmed, and I think Ben Affleck just talked about this, that AI is designed to find the middle path. And I'm also writing a book and I've written it without any AI, mostly because I started writing it before AI existed. That's what I've found too from like a creative standpoint is that it's bringing everything into the middle. So it's really ignoring the outlier experience, the fringe experience, which is the individual experience. So that makes so much sense to me is like, yeah, I use it. I totally do. And we use it in SoulPod for not for content, but for personalization and other things. But also like don't forget that your intuition is like the ultimate power. So I love reminding people of that.
Yeah, I know. I love everything you're saying about this too. I think it's a topic that I think is just important for us all to stay close to right now and like
Yeah.
again use our intuition to navigate because like what integrity feels like to you,
Mm,
and like I think that's a great thing to check in with AI as well. It's really funny,
yeah.
like it's referencing like the just the fact that we live in a world where like we say things like I wrote this book myself, like I wrote it without robots.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like I think of like being an English major way back when and I don't even think, it's so funny to think about how the world has changed because of this. And
Crazy.
I am working on a lot of content for like educational content for Born Witchy for my company. We're also working
Mm,
towards an app right now. It's been a bit of a long process to really figure out like what should this content be and like how do we present all of this and like how do we use AI? Like do we
yeah.
create an AI assistant that like, I do want to have a hand in like how people are interacting with AI when it comes to tarot, just because I do think like people are defaulting to the lazy thing of just like ask Claude or
Yeah.
ChatGPT what these cards mean. And like, it's one thing when like one of my students is doing that and like they have their whole foundation in the tarot and they can enter that space like with discernment. What worries me is like everyone doing that and like,
Hmm.
they're just being this very like homogenized, like, because it goes to the average, right? Is kind of what AI does,
Yeah.
like going to this average interpretation of each card that like makes it all the same. And like, I can't help thinking of like the moon card, the moon archetype in the major arcana, and like how much depth there is to that, and how it like refers to things like our ancestry and like our generational like wisdom and also our generational trauma. Our pattern recognition within ourself is deeper than I think we even know. Like when
Yeah.
I'm like connecting to my intuition, I'm like, there's no way of me really knowing this, but like, am I connecting to like the intuition of like my great 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 grandmother when I do this? And like, how would AI access that thing that's unique to like my design and like the generations and lineage that I come from? And like,
Mm,
that's the thing that I don't wanna get lost, and so, like, stepping into this space of, like that you're in too, of, like, spirituality merging with technology, like, I think it's
yeah.
just so interesting to, like, really have a hybrid approach to it, and to not lose, like, the human touch, and to, like, keep being curious about that, and, like, keep developing that within ourselves.
Mm,
I want everyone to have a physical deck, like, I
yeah.
don't want it all to just be digitized, because like there's something about like the tactility of it and like the being able
Hmm.
to just actually feel the card and look at it, that I think connects you to something like ancient within yourself, that
I
I just
totally agree.
I am not convinced that AI can replace that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing journey, us figuring out this relationship with AI, and I'm sure it'll continue to evolve. But I have a lightning round series of questions for you if you're ready.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
So
ready.
the first one is, what is consciousness to you?
I'm gonna ask the cards
Oh
to
yeah,
answer for
fun.
me.
Yeah, I love
Maybe I'll do
that.
these rapid fire with the cards. That could be
Oh, this is fun. Yeah, let's do that. What is consciousness?
okay.
Cards?
So I got the Six of Swords,
Ooh.
which is an interesting card of consciousness because this is the card of being on your path in some way.
Mm.
And it really does weave in some of what we've been talking about, like when referencing the scary cards, that like being on your path isn't just about skipping through a meadow of sunshine and rainbows. Like it actually is about like weaving together like the whole tapestry of life, the light and the dark, like the yin and the yang, all the things.
Yeah.
So I wonder if consciousness is something to do with sort of like accepting of all, of just like
Yeah.
the lifeness of things, the unity of things, the like the relevance of everything, like beyond judgment. I think there's something to that for me with consciousness for sure. Like part
Mm.
of what I love about the tarot is like the shadow work aspect of it, because I do think we live in a culture that like wants to pretend that everything is just like a skipping sunshine roses like field, and of course I would love
Totally.
to do that, but like I don't know, I also love art and like this idea of chiaroscuro, and like that you actually can't like make a beautiful like drawing if you don't include shadows in it. Like
Mm.
shadows make things beautiful too. So I wonder if consciousness is really about, I feel like I'm not being very articulate with this right now,
No, it's
but
beautiful.
something about like really having like a non-judgmental acceptance of like
Yes.
the everythingness of being.
I love that. That's beautiful. The non-judgmental part I think is key. It's an awareness, the yin and the yang. It's great.
Yeah.
The next question is, what is God or source or oneness to you?
Mm. Well, I do still wanna ask the cards because this is fun,
Yeah, I
but,
love
I mean,
this.
the word that pops to mind for me with that question is just, like, the word love.
Mhm.
For me, that's always been sort of my, and I pulled the 10 of cups, which is it's funny, like, the 2 of cups is, like, the card of romance. The 10 of cups to
Mm.
me, wow. Amazing. Can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
The 10 of cups to me is sort of something deeper than that like tete-a-tete of the 2 of cups, where it's like
Mm.
this undercurrent of like unconditional love that like underpins something through all the ups and downs. And yeah, like my understanding of God is that it's an unconditional love. So love that the cards are agreeing with me.
The
They are
cards.
so uncanny
Wow.
sometimes.
This is what I'm saying, y'all. It's so uncanny. It's so spot on. That's like the perfect card. The next question is, what is one belief that you've had that you no longer believe?
I'm gonna pull a card for every single one of these.
Yeah.
But I
No,
actually
please do.
but It's funny, I saw this meme on Instagram at some point that was like spiritual starter pack, like volume 1. And it was like crystals, tarot cards, like, yoga teacher training, like shamanistic robes, like all the things. And then it was like spiritual, like advanced pack, like volume 2 or whatever. And it was like a cup of black coffee and a cigarette. And it was, I like,
What a
yes to the
vibe.
black coffee. I'm definitely very addicted to coffee, but like not so much to this. No to the cigarette, but
So did this.
I liked like what it was saying, which was like you actually don't need all these accoutrements, like like
The
spirit is
realness
really
of
like
it.
there's
Yeah.
something kind of real and raw and like I don't know. I almost like sometimes like my approach to tarot, I'm like I feel like I'm like the female like dude from the Big Lebowski of spirituality because like I do really like to just like make it very simple and like I'm always like you guys it's a card game, like it's a card game, it's a deck of cards, like you don't have to
Yeah.
be so precious about it. So I think the thing that I don't believe anymore, so funny, I pulled the devil card. Cigarette smoking. No, I'm just kidding.
It's amazing.
That's really interesting that that's the card that came up.
So interesting.
I mean, I feel like it's almost like this is kind of what I'm saying, like the temptation to like have idols and things like that. And like to think that there's anything really
Totally.
outside of yourself. Like your like spirit is accessible and within you. And like, I think when I was younger and like earlier with these things, like I thought there was more stuff you needed to like
Mm,
and like, but and in a way, I did need them then, and like it's the starter pack, right? And then at some point,
right.
you graduate from it, which like leads me to a cool point that I like to make about the tarot, which is like in the same way that in a yoga class they say like the most important things happen off the mat. It's like if you work with the tarot for a while, there comes a point where like you don't even really need to pull cards anymore if you don't want to because you realize that you live in a tarot, like everything is a
Yeah.
tarot.
I love that. What a card to pull for that question. The last one here is it's 100 years in the future on Earth. What do you hope for humanity?
Oh my gosh. Well, I really hope we get through this crazy moment that we're living right now in
Yeah.
the best possible way. Like this is more pulling on astrology stuff, but like, we're like well into the age of Aquarius now. We're going through this like long-term transit of like Pluto and Aquarius that's going to last like for like about the next 20 years. Like it's a big moment of like revolution for us. Like it was interesting because we were on the cusp of this, like when that musical Hamilton like had come out and like everyone was obsessed
Right.
with it. And I was really
Yeah.
interested in it because I was like, wow, like that time period, like when there was the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and all of those revolutions was the last time there was like a similar thing happening in the cosmos. And like here we are again.
Mm,
But it's like this Pluto return kind of thing, but like in the sign of Aquarius that has this very like futuristic sort of tech angle to it, which is expressing itself through AI. So I'm like, I know we're at the beginning of the revolution.
mm-hmm.
And my hope is that like we come through it in like the light versus the shadow of Aquarius, which is like innovation and more humanitarianism and like more connectedness and all of that versus some sort of like harsh individualism or like coldness that I don't think would be so good. I pulled the Magician, which I think is a really nice message to maybe like leave the listeners with, because what I love about the Magician card is that it reminds us that in any given moment, we have at our disposal everything we need to manifest the next moment.
Mm,
I think sometimes it can be really overwhelming to think of things in like a macro level, which is certainly true. I think about like the world right now, but like even if we zoom it into like ourselves and like our projects and our goals and things like that. Here I am building a business called Born Witchy, like wanting to create like a content series and an app and all these things. And like I can get really overwhelmed if I'm like focusing so much on the finished product of the app and how am I going to get there. But what the Magician says is like, Bettina, you have everything you need right now to take the next baby step, which will then give you
mm-hmm.
everything you need right then to move on to the next baby step. And like it's like kind of this Rome wasn't built in a day kind of awareness that like if we're in our integrity, if we're aligned with our highest self, if we are moving through the world in this like connected, intuitive way, moment by moment, we can together, if we all do that together, we can like hopefully manifest this outcome or like even 20 years from now, let alone
Yeah.
100, where we feel like we like put humanity on the right track for the future generations. So I think this Magician is like a nice reminder to just like stay in your practice, like stay in your
Mhm.
integrity at all costs and like work towards your bigger goals in these incremental steps and like keep that larger vision in mind, but also remember to bite size it so that like we don't get so overwhelmed and upset by like the news cycle and all this
Yeah.
that's being like
Yeah.
thrown at us that we like fail to do the big manifestation that we need to do. So,
Yeah. It all starts with the
magician.
individual. That's
Yeah.
so cool. I also love the magician just feels magical. It feels like there's so much that's possible and to not forget that big beautiful possibility for you and your life and for us as a collective. So I love that. And
Totally.
if people want to go deeper with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, please reach out. You can find me on Instagram at Born Witchy. I also post a lot on I actually post a bit more at the moment on my personal account, which is Betina Bethlem. My website is bornwitchy.co or .com. They both go there, and you can get my deck, the cosmic codes there if you want. This is a great way to start interacting with me.
It's so beautiful.
But yeah, I'd love a follow on Instagram because a lot is going to be coming out over the next few months in terms of like a tarot show, like educational content, ultimately the app. So that's probably the
Check it
best place to
out.
find me right now.
Love it. And the deck for those of you not on YouTube is gorgeous. So go check that out.
Thank you so
And
much, Crystal.
yeah, thank you so much, Bettina. This has been so fun. I think we've covered a lot of ground here in the context of tarot and spirituality. So thank you so much for lending your wisdom to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved the conversation.
Thank you for journeying with us today, Light Being. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And before you go, we want to invite you to explore the SoulPod app, where you can immerse yourself in daily lessons, guided meditations, and breath work to develop a soul nourishing daily ritual and tune back into your own inner guidance system. You can download SoulPod in the App Store or directly from the show notes to start your free trial today and awaken the ancient wisdom within you.